प्रभु तव मूर्ति विनोदकारी पलपन विसरे नहीं जो विसारी जुगल चरण सोल चिन्ह जेह नजर समीप रहो हमारी एह। हरि कृष्ण महाराज निजय घनश्याम महाराज निजय स्वामीनारायण भगवान निजय। Supreme Entity, Almighty, Lord Swaminarayan, the path maker to our liberation, and the one who is always watching upon us, Pujapad Guruji, and all of you humble devotees who are watching this lecture. My humble Jai Swaminarayan. Right now, what I did was called a Manglacharan. Manglacharan is something that a person who does katha has to do before he starts his katha. It's kind of like the header. Also, when one ends one's katha, one does the ending as well. So, in the Manglacharan, first I mentioned Bhagwan, then I mentioned Guruji, and then I mentioned all of you devotees. This is kind of like a sign of respect to address all those who are present. Bhagwan is present in his divine form. Pujapad Guruji is present in his divine form. And all of you devotees are present who are watching this katha. So I also respect you and address you as well. And then I said, my humble Jai Swaminarayan. Humble, the word, it seems simple and something that we hear on a daily basis. But it's such a tough characteristic to obtain in one's practical life that many people spend their whole lives as saints or as devotees trying to obtain this attribute, yet it isn't properly gained, you can say. But this attribute is so eye-striking, it has so much weight, because by this single attribute, Bhagwan becomes bound to his devotees. The ever mighty powerful God, we call the Supreme Entity, the one from whose all the avatars, all incarnations emanate and all become absorbed, meaning the Supreme Entity, the one who creates, destroys, and sustains not only one universe, but countless universes, in whose pore, in each and every pore, countless universes are floating like mere atoms, by whose characteristic one has a desire to become free from this world and to attain that very God. Such a supreme entity, Bhagwan Swaminarayan, becomes completely surrendered, completely bound by a person who attains this attribute of humility or humbleness, we can say. What bigger achievement than this? I mean, we hear on a spiritual standpoint, usually just the forward part, where we become bound by Bhagwan because of his characteristics, because of how he is, his greatness, because of his divine incidents. We become absorbed in him. That is a regular method, and that is pretty much the most part how it works. But a reverse effect where Bhagwan himself becomes bound by that devotee, how can that possibly happen? Well, it can happen by this attribute alone, humbleness. Pretty much to lose one's own self-existence, to forget about oneself, to become egoless, to completely put aside one's mind's thoughts and completely act according to one's master. Such kind of humility bounds Bhagwan. And through that, one attains such a highly spiritual stage that no one can ever even imagine. But the foundation of a strong religious, you can say, beginning is humbleness, and also the highest stage, or a person who is really on a high level, his topmost point or his top attribute is also humbleness. So, I was reading the Vachanamrut and I came across the Vachanamrut Gadada, 1st chapter, 58th. Now, this Vachanamrut, in the end, Bhagwan talks about the humbleness that he expects from his devotees. And I want to first read that with you and then share my thoughts so we can relate and move forward in the path of attaining Bhagwan, pleasing Bhagwan, and eventually even bounding Bhagwan to us. Swaminarayan Hare. The only means, this Vachanamrut is Gadada, 1st chapter, 58th. I'm just reading a small paragraph that I want to talk to you about today. The only means of becoming such a staunch devotee is by behaving as a servant of the servants of God, and by realizing all of these devotees are great. I am inferior compared to them all. Realizing this, he behaves as a servant of devotees of God. All of the evil natures of a person who behaves in this manner are destroyed. And day by day, noble virtues such as Gnan, Vairagya, Bhakti, etc. continue to flourish within him. This is the paragraph. Simple, but very difficult to attain if one doesn't have the right understanding. Now, first and foremost, Bhagwan is talking about how to become a staunch devotee. The meaning of staunch means firm or very stable, a strong devotee. Anything we do in our life, have it be go to school, or if you have a job, go to your career, work at your job, whatever it is, we try to achieve such kind of firmness in the field that we are pretty much engaging in. Such as if we are a doctor, we don't wake up late or we don't miss some days. No. Such a doctor who is firm in what he does is time to time, he takes care of all of his patients, he looks after them, he even has, if he has to call them, he calls them, but he also checks that they're rightly medicated. Everything he does, because he's firm in the field, in that particular field. As for a student who is very firm, stable, such a student works hard, does his homework, does not procrastinate, finishes all his projects on time, also prepares very excessively for exams, quizzes, tests, everything. Such are the characteristics of a staunch student or a firm student, meaning he's very, very up to date on what he's doing. He doesn't slack. So these are just examples that I gave you. And in the world, we can see that people have these characteristics. If they didn't, then we wouldn't see top doctors. If they didn't, we wouldn't see valedictorians. We wouldn't see any of these. But there are people out there who are very firm in what they do. And due to that, their status is high. They're also respected in society, depending on what you do. In each and every field, you can say. I just gave you examples of two. But on a religious standpoint, in the standpoint of attaining God, Bhagwan is talking about how to become a staunch devotee. Now, a staunch devotee does not only mean a person who lives in the household life. It also is about, Bhagwan is talking about saints. Bhagwan is talking about older people. Bhagwan is talking about everyone in general. That saints, women devotees, male devotees, elders, everyone. Everyone is included. So he's talking about how can one become a very firm devotee. So Bhagwan is saying, by behaving as a servant of the servants of God, a servant, when we speak that word or when we hear that word, the first thing that comes to our mind is a butler holding a napkin and a dish and pretty much standing aside his master and pretty much complying to each and every command. Yeah, sure, that is considered to be a servant in that perspective, in that standpoint. Because there's a master or a CEO of a company, and there's a butler that pretty much does what he asks. But servant is not only all physical attire. A servant is such a person. He serves physically, God, saints, and devotees, but also he serves them by his deeds, his actions, and his speech. We can say that I am a servant of God. I just spoke that. But if it's not practically in my life, then it's worthless. But to think in the manner, to not develop any kind of thoughts of ego in one's mind, to not feel that I am above these people, whoever they are, X, Y, Z. Who are these people to tell me what to do? To not even think that. That is the subtle or the atomic characteristic of the servant. First and foremost, physical. Sure, there's many people who follow the physical characteristics of the servant. And through that, people sometimes estimate, or people guess, or people even just say that, oh, he is a true servant. But it doesn't end at it doesn't end at a physical level. There's more to a servant. His thoughts, his actions, how he goes about his life in each and every manner, how he even responds to another person's command or remark. If that remark is kind of insulting, how he would respond also shows if he's a servant or not. So, in the religious standpoint, in Bhagwan Swaminarayan's eyes, when that word servant comes up, do not just think in a physical perspective. think of it in the perspective of physical, as I described, also in a mental perspective, as I described, and also in the perspective of engaging back in conversations, talking back and forth, thinking that this person is superior to me, that these are the true characteristics of a servant. Now, Bhagwan is saying that by behaving as a servant of servants of God, and by realizing that all these devotees are great and I am inferior compared to them all. Now, thinking this and putting it practically into one's life, just think about how difficult it may be. And it is difficult. It's not an easy task. But there's a quote you can say, or a slogan that I'm reminded of. No matter how difficult something is, if you think impossible is nothing, then it can definitely be overcome. Now, to think that I am inferior, meaning I am lower than these devotees, compared to these devotees, I am lower than them, and they are superior to me. They are greater than me. No matter a devotee, meaning, remember, I only said it doesn't have to be only devotees as householders, even saints. To think that suppose one was a very staunch devotee, a very high devotee, and there is another new devotee that just joined your satsang. He doesn't know much, but he is a devotee. He follows the rules, regulations, commands of Bhagwan. So he is considered a devotee. If that devotee, who's very high and who's been doing satsang for many, many years, if he thinks that I am an inferior devotee compared to this person who is superior and looks at his good qualities, that devotee is definitely, in the eyes of Bhagwan, a staunch devotee. He is definitely a devotee with understanding, and he, at the end of his life, or even after, will bound Bhagwan to himself, that Bhagwan will never leave his side. Because of this understanding. What understanding? All of these devotees are great, and I am inferior compared to all of them. Realizing he behaves as a servant of servants of all the devotees of God. Now, we're talking about in the perspective of this generation, of the present time. But to exemplify, to back up his points, his views, his perspective, his principles, Bhagwan himself was like this. And there's an incident that I'm reminded of that I want to share with you today. Because there's many, many people in the world that talk the talk, but there's very few people after talking the talk also walk the walk. Meaning, that was just an example. The principle behind that example is that people talk big, but their actions exemplify nothing. But Bhagwan himself was not like that. 230 years ago, when Bhagwan Swaminarayan descended from Akshardham here on this earth, and he spoke this Vachanamrut in front of his saints and devotees, he completely, this whole Vachanamrut, he completely experienced all the talks he talked about. He completely went through each and everything. And off of that, he spoke. Meaning, he walked the walk, or he talked the talk, and he also walked the walk. Through that, we can understand that this is true This is legitimate, and it can also affect a person. Now, I'm reminded of an incident where Bhagwan shows this characteristic of humbleness, humility, we can say. Now, once, a large group of devotees came to Gadara. Gadara is a remote village in Gujarat, India, to see Bhagwan Swaminarayan, to have Bhagwan's darshan. After his darshan, they had his darshan and they listened to some talks. They were in Lakshmivari, which is right by Dada Khacher's Darbar. They were going to Dada Khacher's Darbar. So they were, after listening to the talks and after having his darshan, they were moving from Lakshmivari to Dada Khacher's Darbar. It's a little distant away. On the way there, the whole group was walking, and there was a little boy who was also walking in the group. Now, this little boy, obviously, he's innocent, he doesn't know much, and he had a bad habit of spitting. So, as that group was going across to Dada Khacher's Darbar, they came across a Jain temple. They were just walking by, and a Jain saint was sitting outside of that temple, and that boy spat on the side without looking. So what happened was that spit actually landed on that Jain saint. Now, at that time, there was many oppositions in the time of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Many people opposed him. Many people discouraged Bhagwan. Many people insulted him. And not only him, but they beat his saints. They tortured his saints. Yet, Bhagwan continued the high road. And Bhagwan continued his path of what he was here to do on this earth. So back to the story. That boy spat without looking, and his spit landed on the Jain saint. Now, the Jain saint was pretty much completely against Bhagwan at that time, and what he did was he became furious. He became so furious that he told his community, the devotees that were Jain, he told all those devotees to close their shops and protest that this is what happened. A boy of Bhagwan Swaminarayan spat on me. Look at how everyone worships Bhagwan Swaminarayan, but look at what kind of teachings Bhagwan teaches his devotees. This is pretty much, you guys are all in the wrong direction of pleasing Bhagwan Swaminarayan, worshipping Bhagwan Swaminarayan. This saint started just talking and rambling about these various points that he had in his mind to the community of his devotees and other people. So the Jain community completely went in protest. They closed all their shops and they started pretty much having a boycott, you can say, against Bhagwan Swaminarayan. So Bhagwan heard about this. Bhagwan was sitting in Dada Khacher's Darbar. Bhagwan heard about this, pretty much what had happened. So Bhagwan went straight to the Jain saint and he folded his hands humbly. And he said, I had heard about what had happened. Please forgive me for the incident. The boy is young and innocent, and he has this bad habit, but he did not intentionally do this to you. So please forgive him and forgive me on his behalf. Bhagwan just folded his hands and became completely humble. The Jain saint was furious, but hearing this humility in Bhagwan's voice, the saint became completely calm. All his anger went away right away. And the Jain saint, just right there, without saying anything else, he told his devotees to stop the boycott, stop the protest, and go back to your normal life. Now, such a small incident, but such a great action, feat by Bhagwan. First and foremost, when Bhagwan heard about this, I'm showing you the characteristics of how God behaved on this earth. First and foremost, after the boy spat on the Jain saint and Bhagwan got the news, Bhagwan himself did not become furious or did not become angry on that boy, because he understood that the boy is small, he's innocent, he does not have a bad intention against anyone. He has this bad habit, sure. Due to that, he got in trouble for that, sure. But first and foremost, Bhagwan did not get angry. Second, after that, Bhagwan rushed to that saint, meaning he did not just hear this and then pretty much let go of it and said, just let it be, everything will be okay in a couple of days. Sure, that could have also happened. I mean, how long would such a protest last for such a small incident like this? But Bhagwan rushed to the incident. Bhagwan rushed to that saint. And third, Bhagwan folded his hands and apologized and took everything on his shoulders. Now, on one side, everyone understands that this is a supreme Bhagwan, meaning all those devotees, all those saints who are there, they completely understand that he is the supreme Lord of Lords. On the other side, the Jain devotees, they do not know of this. They have no understanding. They do not recognize that this is Bhagwan himself. They just feel that everyone worships him as Bhagwan. But the people who knew, the saints who knew, the devotees who knew, just look at what kind of feat, what kind of character Bhagwan is showing in front of them. They know that Bhagwan is supreme, yet Bhagwan is showing humility. They know Bhagwan is the doer of everything, is the all-doer, yet he is showing humility. Such kind of character made Bhagwan Swaminarayan pretty much a household name throughout the world we can see even today. Supremacy lies not in showing miracles, not in showing magical powers, but lies in these kinds of characteristics. And Bhagwan had this characteristic, and that's the only way that he could narrate in this Vachanamrut, Kandari 1st chapter, 58th Vachanamrut, that such a devotee, if one becomes a servant of servants and realizes that I am inferior and everyone else is superior, then this is the equal sign. As a result, all of the evil natures of a person who behaves in this manner are destroyed. Evil nature is destroyed, such as anger, greed, lust, ego. All these natures are destroyed. And day by day, noble virtues such as Gnana, Vairagya, Bhakti, Dharma, Mahima, Prem, divine vision towards others, seeing good qualities in others, continue to flourish within him. Just by becoming the servant of servants, just by folding one's hands, all of one's evil natures can be destroyed, and all good qualities that Bhagwan expects in our life, such as Dharma, Bhakti, Gnana, Vairagya, that Bhagwan wants to see, that Guruji wants to see in our life, can flourish day by day. But it happens only when one starts to understand and realize that I am inferior, everyone is superior to me. This is the humbleness that Bhagwan wants to develop in each and every one of his devotees. And I want to give you an antidote or some kind of medicine, just in case you need it. You can use it. Anytime you develop some kind of ego, in the perspective of a student, if one gets straight A's and also gets into a very well-respected college because of one's grades, and if one develops ego, that, look at me, I'm the smartest student in my class, I got into this college and this person could not get into this college, that's why I'm greater than him. If some people, or if a student, if you're a student and you start to develop these kinds of thoughts, then just think to yourself, I got these grades. Sure, I made an effort. Yes, that's correct. But who am I to develop some kind of ego when the Supreme Bhagwan himself, the creator, destroyer, and sustainer of everything, he doesn't have ego, then who am I to develop ego? Even Bhagwan does not have ego, and he pretty much creates universes, sustains them, and destroys them. He does all this, yet he does not even develop ego. If we even take a branch of a tree and break it in half, we don't even know how to put it back together. Then how can we develop ego? And yet Bhagwan himself creates these universes and can destroy them in the snap of the fingers. Yet he shows by his character in his life, in the 49 years he was present on this earth 230 years ago, that he is egoless. He has no ego. Then who are we to develop ego? This medicine can be used in any field. If you're a student, sure. If you're even working as a doctor and you develop some kind of ego that I make a lot of money, sure, that can be applied too. It can be applied anywhere. Even in the spiritual world, it can be applied that if one does more devotion than others, if one does more bhakti, if one serves others, if one does a lot more than others, and if one is having these kinds of thoughts, then one can think that who am I to have ego when Bhagwan himself showed such kind of humility. Bhagwan himself, he didn't even do any of that. He did not even, back to the story, he did not even spit. He wasn't the one. He just took it on his shoulders because it was his responsibility, or moreover, because his character and nature was like that. So, in conclusion, as we move forward in our life, I see many, many people just making a habit, not moving forward in any direction, just kind of going according to one's schedule, ending one's day, same thing over. When the weekend comes, whatever plans one has, that's it. But no one thinks in this manner. So where am I spiritually? How long will my worldly life continue, and how long will my spiritual life continue? One should learn to examine. And through that, if one sees that progress is being made, then sure, you're on the right track and you should continue. But if one does not see it and one just continues as a habitual lifestyle, then one should stop and think that how long do I want to continue? How much time until I want to attain such kind of characteristics, such kind of attributes, virtues, that will bound Bhagwan himself. And through that, when one thinks, there will be a thought that arises in one's heart. And off of that, one will be able to make the right direction. So, let us pray that we also develop such kind of characteristics in our life to please Bhagwan, his great saint, and devotees and also to bound Bhagwan, his great saint and devotees. Saying this, my humble Jai Swaminarayan. Shripatim Sridharam Sarvadeveswaram Bhaktidaram Atmajam Vasudevam Hare Madhavam Kesavam Kamadam Karanam Swaminarayanam Nilkantham Bhaje. Hare Krishna Maharaj.